Be sure to check out some of my latest videos. One of my latest videos is IDW4. You have The Hunt. You also have Mail Call. And also scroll down and watch some of my older videos like Negan. You girls and guys be safe out there, and I will catch you later. Peace. Stop and refuel. Homemade calzones. These are so good. Want a bite? Oh my god, just so delicious. Alright. Hey, what's up, comic book peeps? Welcome to another episode of Direct Edition. The channel is Fair Hall Direct Edition. I'm down here in the theater, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to do a video on what got me into comics. Well, I can remember from even back when I was like 3 years old, I've always been into comics. It's never been like, I can't even recall anything that got me into comics, but anything that probably would have got me into comics was my mom was a big Star Trek fan. So growing up younger, you know, I watched a lot of Star Trek with my mom. I don't remember any of it because I'm not a Trekkie fan anymore. But I've always been a huge Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk fan or whatever. But what started me to collecting comic books was simply, I went to a comic book store and I ran across these. Okay? Now, when I actually got into the comic cards, that was it. You know, that was like 1990. So, like I was saying, the comic cards are what actually got me into collecting comics, especially with reading up on the guys, you know what I'm saying, like Quasar, Archangel. When I saw this card of Wolverine, he became my favorite hero instantly. That was it. I didn't know who Wolverine was. I didn't know what he did. But as soon as I saw this card, that was it. And also, too, with mutants, I was so used to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that, okay, something's missing. That, oh God, it's a card missing. It's got to be somewhere. Lord, please, Jesus, help me. But, because these are classics, and I have the whole set. But this is what introduced me to more the personal characters, you know, outside of just regular Captain America, Spider-Man, and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I've always been a fan of comics, but this is what started me to collecting comic books. My first comic book was a Marvel Presents Wolverine, where he's actually climbing in the tree. So yeah, this is the first comic book that I've ever owned, Marvel Presents. Like I said, I fell in love with Wolverine once I saw his card, and then soon after I got this from a classmate. This is not the original one that I owned because the original one I owned had so many spine ticks, and you know how I am about spine ticks and collecting. So, but yeah, this is my first comic book, which is pretty cool. So another thing that really got me into comics when I was younger was the Superman movies. Definitely this one with General Zod, and also the one with Richard Pryor. The one with Richard Pryor, I just remember that being pretty cool with Christopher Reeves. Christopher Reeves will always be the ultimate Superman to me. I have my 6 fingers to interrupt the video. Right here's the back of it. But yeah, I just remember this being like one of the iconic things that definitely fueled my comic book fever. Even before the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even before the X-Men, there was 1970s, I think, and 80s Superman, which really fueled the fire. But how I learned a lot of DC characters were simply by the DC cards. Now, the DC cards was my introduction into like Mr. Miracle, the Blue Beetle, stuff like that. So right around the time that Marvel came out with their cards, DC came out with their cards, and this is like the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, Silver Age, and Classic cards that started it all. And once I started collecting these cards, I started collecting comic books. And like I said, you know, these cards were everything to me. You know, I used to always keep them, you know, nice and neat. So these are still my original cards from my childhood. A couple of corners are, you know, messed up. But like I said, I basically, this was my library into comics. And it just really, when DC and Marvel released these cards, that was it for me. You know what I'm saying? I just became a rabid fan. And at the same time of collecting these cards, I also too started collecting other things such as My X-Men VHS. I watched this to death. I mean, when I was younger, I watched this, and this came out way before the animated series. You know what I'm saying? I still keep this for nostalgia. I have a VCR downstairs. I'm sure the kids nowadays would be like, "What in the heck is that?" But definitely still kept my original VHS. I love this X-Men comic. They didn't give Wolverine a Canadian accent. They gave him like a Russian or Brazil accent, which was really weird. But this comes from the iconic cover of X-Men Classics #1, which I end up finding in a flea market find. I actually found that comic book with this iconic cover, and I actually have a red X-Men shirt with this iconic X-Men pose on it. So pretty cool. You know, I'm pretty much the X-Men head, you know, above everything. If you ask me what's my favorite comic books of all time, it's X-Men. If you ask me who's my favorite hero of all time, it's Wolverine. Closely, very closely followed by Batman. Okay, so what also fueled the fire was things like, you know, Batman animated series. I mean, who doesn't? Oh my God, this cartoon was everything to me. And this all started happening around like when I became a huge collector. All of it happened between the years of 1990, 1991, and 1992. This came out in 1992 because I remember going through the Hurricane Andrew back home in Miami. And when we were recovering from the hurricane, this hit the scene, and it was it. That was it. You know, Batman has always been iconic in my comic book collecting, especially when 1980s movie came out with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton. The Joker was always my favorite villain from a baby. I've always liked the Joker. It's never been any contest as far as any villains even coming close to who's my favorite villain. It's always been the iconic Joker, especially when Heath Ledger took him over. That's one of my favorite posters back there. You see how he's just looking over my shoulder, just so menacing. But Batman the Animated Series is another thing that just freaking just, you know, took it to a whole nother level. And then what took it to another level was when they introduced Harley Quinn. I wasn't one of the ones that dropped on the Harley Quinn bandwagon. As soon as I saw her in the cartoon, from day one, she was absolutely just everything to me. I definitely love Harley Quinn. And I think his Batman's Rogues Gallery is pretty cool. I definitely like Waylon Jones. Uh, Waylon Jones is Killer Croc right here. Definitely love Clayface, all his Rogues Gallery, but nobody comes close to the Joker. So if I had to name some of my top villains, two of them are out of Batman's Rogue Gallery, and that is Joker and Bane. Um, but you know, from the X-Men, I love Apocalypse. And right after this came out in 1992. This came out, the X-Men, and when this came out, it was crazy because from this point to the time when the X-Men movie came out, everybody thought I was a nerd and was like, oh, you know, why do you collect comic books and stuff like that? But when this came out and when the X-Men movie came out, guess what? Everybody had tons of questions to ask me. Who's that guy? What does that guy do? What da 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 da? And I had to break it down to him. And all of a sudden, uh, you know, comic books are cool now. But you guys don't understand. Growing up in the 80s and even before the 80s, like early 80s, even during the 80s, before the movies and before this and before all that, even to this day, we still like, oh, that's what you collect? You collect nerds and you da 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 da. Especially me because, you know, I don't look like the typical outsider, but I am an outsider. And I used to get my head tore open for collecting comics. Even to this day, at this age, it's still not accepted widely like we want it to be. It's almost like we're outsiders, and it's, you know, people still don't understand um, why we collect, or you know, they grow up. You're such a big kid, and why you have all those toys and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, like the same way, you know what I'm saying, we like football, the same way we like pro wrestling, the same way we like UFC, the same way we like boxing, we like comics, and there's nothing wrong with that. Comics are nothing but a reflection of, you know, old stories that people will tell around fires, you know, or religious books like that, like the Bible. You know what I'm saying? You have a lot of biblical stuff that's in comics. You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing wrong with comics, and actually, comics have made my vocabulary on a whole nother level. Like, I'm able to talk with a person who's a CEO of a company, and I'm also able to go on the corner and talk to somebody who might be, excuse me, selling drugs. But I have that lingo. I have that lingo from, from this side to that side. So comic books have been very beneficial in my life, and that's why that's how I got into comics. Basically, was 1991 cards, and even before then, from a baby. I remember at 3 years old, I used to wrap the towel around my neck and swing from a palm tree as if I was Superman. So I've always been into comics. I can't tell you when I started, but I can tell you when I started collecting was definitely in 1990 when I first came across the Marvel comic cards. So there you have it. Once again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Direct Edition. The channel is Fred Hall Direct Edition. You girls and guys be safe out there, and I will catch you later. Peace.